Live from the city that never sleeps. 17 miles from Madison Square Garden, New York City. It's America at Night with Rich Valdez. America's favorite late-night talk program, featuring interesting guests from around the world and calls from across America. And now, here is your host, Rich Valdez.
Hi there, good evening, and what's up, America? I am Rich Valdez, Valdez with an S, at Rich Valdez on all of the social media. Welcome to the Monday night edition of the program. We're live, we're national. It's a blessing to be here with you. Our phone number is 833-4825-337, 833-4-VALDEZ. And man, you know, I always try to get into the top stories, and, you know, sometimes I like to have a good time, but there's not a lot of fun stories out there today. Literally, Jews and others being set on fire by a man that murdered some people, setting them on fire with a blowtorch. Molotov cocktails, homemade blowtorch, and literally lighting them on fire. Free Palestine, he's chanting it. I'm seeing a trend. I don't know about you, right? You know, I was just watching the news, prepping for the show, and they're playing a montage of President Joe Biden saying the biggest threat in America is white supremacy. And I got to say, I don't necessarily believe that. And why? Because I don't see any white supremacy people torching people. Instead, I see a repeat of what happened in the 1940s. You've got Jews being burned. This is insanity, I believe. And it's like, wow. Last week they were at a party, they get gunned down after leaving the party. Now, this man shouting like a lunatic, burning people. I mean, I got to tell you, this is not what I expected for today, for Monday. I thought I was going to walk into all the stuff about Secretary Bessent setting Margaret Brennan straight and all these other things. I didn't think, like a Monday. On Mondays, there's usually cabinet people out there on the Sunday shows. Didn't think we were going to be talking about this. And of course, it didn't just happen. And, it happened a couple of days ago or whatever, yesterday. But whatever. The point I'm making, didn't think I was going to be talking about my reaction to people setting people on fire. Or this person, this Mohammed Solim. I'm probably saying that wrong. Crazy. Now, there's a piece on Fox News that's indicating that this person's vehicle had USAID paperwork inside of it. Then people wonder how and why we're going after USAID. Then the next report is that he's in the country illegally. I mean, this is a horrible situation, and it keeps getting worse. I, for one, I got to tell you, if I were Jewish looking, lived in a Jewish neighborhood, I'd be very careful. If you're in a state where you can pack, you should pack. You should protect yourself at all costs, because it seems like it's open season, right? And this is how they inflicted the attack on October 7th. And over the weekend, a dear friend of mine, you guys know him well. He is Ruben the Cuban, right? Came from Havana, Cuba on a jet ski to Key West, Florida, 20-some-odd years ago, and became a citizen. He's a citizen of the United States, and for whatever reason, he doesn't like Republicans, in particular Trump. And he says, no, because Republicans say that the Democrats are communists. And he says, no, but you don't understand. I really know what communists are. Now, the big difference with most Cubans in America and newer Cubans, like the last 20 years or so, is that the Cubans that came here back in, the 50s, 60s, 70s, even the 80s, they were constantly being imprisoned for being against the political regime, the regime of Fidel Castro. However, the most recent wave of Cubans coming in really have lived their entire lives under communism. And if they have an anti-communist opinion, it's because they heard about it, right? They didn't experience it. They didn't live it. They don't know it. In some cases, not even their parents know it at this point because of how many people left Cuba. So the point I make is my buddy will, in one breath, will tell you, I hate communists, I hate Castro, and I can't stand Trump. And I say, well, how do you reconcile all this? And he goes into this diatribe about many things. And I come up with an answer. The answer is news sources, right? News sources make a heck of a difference. You come to the country, you're a native Spanish speaker, you have two major Spanish networks, Telemundo and Univision. You tell me which one of those is the conservative network, right? There isn't one. So you have two left-leaning networks that are not very interested in talking about God, talking about country, talking about family, right? They talk about left-leaning issues. So I think he spends the last 20 years here studying CNN, MSNBC, Univision, Telemundo, and not really getting into anything else. Now, he is, I'm going to say, very independent. But we were talking about this stuff over the weekend, and he was telling me before this attack with the flamethrower. This was on Friday early. And he was telling me, it's so unfair to see this professional fighting force in Israel, the IDF, go after and decimate this place called Gaza. It's just incredibly unfair. These people are fighting with rocks. They're fighting with their grandparents' shotgun. Making the case about, how it reminded him of the colonists fighting against the British Crown, filling their muskets with gravel and rocks. And we had this whole conversation. He was saying there's such a primitive fighting force. There's no real opposition. What Israel is doing is criminal. And I thought to myself, what is Israel doing other than responding to what they did? I mean, is he totally leaving out the fact that they literally went and killed 1,000-some-odd people at a music festival? And that, my friends, is exactly the problem that we have in our media. So I want to talk about these religious attacks. I want to talk about, we talked right before the weekend about the Christians that were blamed because they were standing up for traditional gender roles. All of that is insane. And I, for one, I'm very glad that this White House has emphasis on issues of faith. This president has put emphasis on defending people's right to believe in their faith. And takes action when we have the types of attacks that we're having. So we're going to have a conversation with Jenny Korn. She is the head of the White House Faith Office, and she's a deputy assistant to the president. She's been in the White House a long time, from Trump 1.0 and before. So you keep it locked right here, and we're coming right back with Jenny Korn.
This is America at Night with Rich Valdez.
I want to listen to you, Rich, all the time.
America at Night with Rich Valdez.
The suspect in Colorado was reportedly in the U.S. illegally. According to the White House, 45-year-old Mohammed Sabri Solomon is an Egyptian national who originally entered the U.S. on a non-immigrant visa back in 2022. That visa apparently expired back in November of 2023. He was then granted a temporary work visa, which also expired a few months later in March. In a post online, White House Deputy Chief of Staff Stephen Miller, writing right here, a terror attack was committed in Boulder, Colorado by an illegal alien. He was granted a tourist visa by the Biden administration, and then he illegally overstayed that visa. In response, the Biden administration gave him a work permit. Suicidal migration must be fully reversed.
But what we do know and have confirmed, 8 people were set on fire in what's believed to be an anti-Semitic attack. This is the man who's in custody, responsible for this, according to police. 45-year-old Mohammed Solomon, seen here This was a picture from some of the witnesses. Police say he used Molotov cocktails and a makeshift flamethrower on members of the Jewish community. And in video from moments right after the attack, Solomon can be heard saying, quote, "They are the killers and Palestine is free." Take a listen.
That's what he's got right here is Molotov cocktails. It's alcohol.
Now, the White House Deputy Chief of Staff Stephen Miller wrote on X a short time ago that the terror attack was committed by an illegal alien who illegally overstayed his visa. The FBI says this crime is being investigated as an act of terrorism.
So there you have it. Again, this is what we're talking about. People getting set on fire for being Jewish. I want to get some reaction to this from the Deputy Assistant to the President, Director of the White House Faith Office, and a friend of this program, Jenny Korn. Welcome back.
Thank you so much. Good evening, Rich. It's so glad to be back.
You bet. And always a pleasure to talk to you. Never a pleasure to talk about stuff like this. I spent the last few minutes really just in a state of incredulity, having to talk about people being set on fire, not just regular fire, but using a blowtorch. And I mean, this was quite a scene. What are your thoughts?
My thoughts are, I can't believe this is happening in America. This is America.
Right.
We really have to stop and go, this is supposed to be home of the brave, land of the free, and people are getting set on fire. People are being discriminated for their religious beliefs, and people are being killed in the Capitol for just being Jewish. So I can't believe what is happening in the United States. And, when you heard Stephen Miller's quote there about this was as a result of illegal immigration. So now we've got anti-Semitism plus illegal immigration. Biden is the horrible gift that keeps on giving. This is a direct result of the horrific policies that Biden put into place. One, to have a completely open border, to have people like this evil man come and do this to 8 innocent people who were just there supporting the release of hostages. And also just his lack of even calling out anti-Semitism, doing anything about anti-Semitism. They talk a good game, but they don't do anything. The good news is, Rich, is that President Trump is the most pro-American, pro-Israel, and pro-Jewish president that we've had in history.
Yeah, no, I believe that, and thank God for it. But I look at this, and I'm with you. I'm with you, and I feel, I don't know, I feel badly. I feel nervous. I feel a lot of things that we're experiencing these things in America. This is not something we're reading that's happening overseas. Like when you hear about the farmers in South Africa and that type of genocide, or the Christian genocide that occurs on a regular basis. Now we're seeing a Jewish genocide, or at least the beginnings of it, taking place right here in the United States. It's scary to me because, I see a trend, right? And they're screaming the same thing, free Palestine. It makes me wonder, how do we put an end to it? Obviously, there's commitment from the White House. There's commitment from those in law enforcement. I don't think the vast majority of Americans support anything like this, but it's still happening. Where do you think this goes? What do you think is the next step?
Right. Well, your listeners should know that anti-Semitism in the U.S. has increased tenfold. In 2015, there was 942 incidents of anti-Semitism. Fast forward to 2024, it has increased by 893% with almost 10,000 incidents of anti-Semitism. So we need to recognize that this is a problem, not whistle by the graveyard and go, oh, yes, we, like a Chuck Schumer or even a Biden who is like, yes, we're against anti-Semitism. You have to do some action. I mean, this is a direct correlation of the indoctrination of hate in our classrooms, indoctrination of people of hate of our Jewish community, which is a small community, by the way, and also a direct correlation of not calling it out. So the first thing you have to do is you have to name it so that people can identify it. So the president immediately came out and said, this is anti-Semitism. The FBI was on it immediately, saying that there will be justice. Same thing that happened to the poor, innocent young people who were about to get engaged here in Washington, D.C., were just at an event, very innocent. You've got to call it out, and then you've got to do actions, right? And so one of the things this president, and he's not about sitting idly by on his hands, he has expanded his order from 45. Takes forceful and unprecedented steps to marshal all federal resources to combat the explosion of anti-Semitism on our campus and in our streets since October 7th, 2023. He has, as you've seen, and it's a big scuttle, that he's taken away federal funding from these college campuses who just I don't understand it. Like, I watch what's happening where you see these pro-Hamas, that's what it is, pro-Hamas protests against innocent people. Again, we go back to, I can't believe that a Jewish student is in fear for their life, for their safety, walking on a campus that they pay money to go to, and the faculty says, we cannot keep you safe, you should stay home. We met at the White House with 24 Jewish students from Northwestern University. They were each telling us one after another everything that they'd been in through, not being able to go to class, being bullied, being spat on, being followed, them taking over their cafeteria. They said not one administrator or one professor would stand up and help them because they went to professors and said, will you help champion us? They had to I go, well, who is this adult with you here? They said, this is an alum who decided to take the mantle and help us and fight for us. And the president of the college Republicans had joined them as well. So we can't stand up for it. So we need to get them where they hurt, and that's where funding comes in.
Yeah, Jenny Korn, I want you to stick with me. We're going to continue the conversation. Amigos, we're on with Deputy Assistant to the President and Director of the White House Office of Faith, Jenny Korn. And we're going to talk about this topic. We're also going to talk about how Christians are under attack and being blamed for everything in Seattle, plus some of the major initiatives that are coming out of her office. So keep it locked right here, amigos. It's Rich Valdez. We're coming right back. And your calls are going to be with us as well. 833-4-VALDEZ.
Well, thank you, Rich, and thank you for everything. I know you very well, and I listen, but I have a lot of people that listen, and they love your show, and I appreciate it very much.
America at Night with Rich Valdez.
Russell Johnson is the lead pastor of the Pursuit Northwest Church, and he helped organize both events in Seattle, and he joins us now. Pastor, it's good to see you tonight. Tell us what you saw and heard when things began to develop into chaos and unrest.
Yeah, it was crazy. It started on Saturday with a worship event in Cal Anderson Park. And that event has, of course, been labeled by the media as some sort of anti-LGBT type rally, and it wasn't. That event offered free haircuts to kids, free bike giveaways, free groceries for the community, free prayer for people who were in need of it, and then it also incorporated a worship element at the end of that outreach, and that was when we were swarmed by hundreds of Antifa militants. And I'll only correct one thing in the reporting of your story. They weren't throwing water balloons. They were throwing water balloons filled with urine at Christians who stood in the park and were assaulted for the high crime of worshiping Jesus in a public space.
That's Pastor Russell Johnson talking about what happened in Seattle. And we had some great feedback from our buddy from our affiliate, KTTH in Seattle, Jason Rant, who joined us on Friday. But I want to come back to this conversation that we're having with the director of the White House Faith Office, former senior advisor at the National Faith Advisory Board and deputy assistant to the president, Jenny Korn. Jenny Korn, this thing in Seattle, I think, was just such a wild thing where we had the mayor, instead of saying, hey, no, the radicals on the left that were starting problems and throwing urine and doing all these crazy things, they weren't the ones to blame. It was the Christians that were there that were saying that boys should be boys, girls should be girls, and, really just, I think, protesting things that are pretty fundamental and true. Jenny
Right.
Korn.
They had a sign there. If you look at the video that says "Don't mess with our kids," and most of the day was filled with worship and singing. People with their eyes closed, their hands raised up, doing some of those giveaways that he was talking about, and it's just incredulous that basically the mayor of Seattle took the side of Antifa over this peaceful Christian rally. So basically, you can just being Christian offends them. So you just can't be with your beliefs. That's why the White House Faith Office, that I am very proud to be the director of, we condemned the violent disruption of that Seattle's May Day USA worship, and we affirmed the fundamental rights to free speech and religious freedom for all Americans as protected, guess what, by the federal law. And public officials must protect the inalienable rights of all citizens regardless of their faith or religious beliefs. So we urged the city of Seattle and the mayor to uphold these rights. Of course, he's not going to, of faith-based events and safeguarding the ability for people of faith to gather and express their beliefs. But he took the side of Antifa. And what I'm really proud of is the people of Seattle who said, no, we're not going to back down. We're not going to bow down to Antifa. And we're going to go to the mayor's office and we're going to say our piece. People of faith have every right to have a voice in their government, just like everybody else. But for far too long, the federal government, the state government, and even the local government has discriminated against people of faith and gotten away with it. Not anymore. This White House Faith Office, we are laser focused on religious freedom, and we are working directly with Department of Justice and all the other entities with the task forces that we have stood up. So people, I want everyone here with an earshot to know that people of faith are very well represented in the White House. We're in our offices in the West Wing, and we are a direct report to the president, and he cares about people of faith and upholding people's faith in the United States.
Well, and this is an important thing because obviously we're, 5 months removed from an administration that was almost championing the cause of going after people for their faith. I'm thinking in particular of those like attending Latin Mass, labeling them domestic terrorists in some situations. That is like a wild leap to say that, because you go to Latin Mass, you might be some sort of radical. How did we get to that place, Jenny Korn, and how did we reverse course so quickly?
Right. I every day I go to work and I'm going, what else do we have to battle? I definitely truly feel like a freedom fighter. How we got to this place, I think that people of faith got lazy a little bit, and
complacent.
I think that they, everybody's kind of complacent. That's a better word. Thank you. And if it doesn't happen to you, right? Well, then I don't really have a problem with religious freedom. And so I think the left and really the anti-faith agenda has decided to take that over and to label people of faith as bigots and racists and hate and all that stuff, while at the same time being those racists, those bigots against people of faith. And we're not just talking about Christians. We're talking about Jewish people. We're talking about Muslims. I mean, Muslims joined with Christians and Jewish families in, I think it was Minneapolis, to fight for their own children so that sexuality wasn't being taught to 5-year-olds. So it's this weird, so anyway, complacency, you had people who in the anti-faith agenda going, I'm going to seize on this. And then you had elected officials who are allowing this to happen. And so I think sometimes things have to get to a bubbling point, which is what we're at, where over 70% of the cases that go to court of religious freedom are because the government is fighting people of faith, not because it's an individual person against a person of faith. So we have to start, and that's what we're doing. We're looking at all the places where the federal government has discriminated against people of faith, and we're fixing those. We're righting those wrongs, and we're empowering people of faith to let them know that they need to be part of this solution. They need to be part of their government because they have a voice, like I said. And then we get to that level where this can never happen again, no matter who's in office next, that people of faith will fight for their rights and that they will not be quiet again. Because we need to remember that this country was founded on faith and on God. Look at all the monuments here in Washington, D.C., from Lincoln to George Washington to FDR, all have Bible quotes and verses about God and faith and prayer. So we need to remember that, and remember also that faith is what guides us and what has made us a great nation, and we need to continue to have that freedom here in America.
Familia, we are on with Jenny Korn. She is the White House Faith Director. And, you know, Jenny Korn, I want to ask you a question that, and maybe it is and maybe it isn't, but how much, if any, of the reason we're in this place that we were in, or we arrived at the place we were at, is because of intervention by the government on the church, right? The government telling the church what they can and what they can't talk about from the pulpit, threatening to pull 501c3s and whatnot, which isn't really a thing, you know, when push comes to shove. And from the lawyers I've spoken with, you can't really limit the church's speech on things as long as they're not endorsing candidates per se. And I think that really kind of coerced a lot of people to just say, I don't know if I'm going to talk about anything. What do you think?
I agree with you. You're talking about the Johnson Amendment, and the Johnson Amendment, which is just crazy, basically says what you're saying. You can't endorse as a pastor in front of your pulpit. I, as a pastor of this church, we endorse this candidate, and I want you all to vote for this candidate. That's what you can't say. You can talk all day long about biblical values and how they align with you and who supports those biblical values. But here's the thing. The government, you're right, there are people in the government, not well-meaning people at all, who have said, we're going to weaponize the IRS and we're going to go after these churches. We're going to go after these synagogues if we see that they're out of line. And so really the process is the punishment, because not one of these actual cases has gone to the Supreme Court, and groups like the First Liberty Institute, those who fight these cases, they want that. They want to go to battle on IRS because they know that on constitutional rights that will win every single time. Think about this. During the Biden administration, there are IRS agents who were watching sermons to see what pastors were saying, to see if they could come after them. And again, the process is the punishment. You get a letter from the IRS, you get a warning, you get a call. That's scary to a church. That's especially if you're just growing your church and you're like, hey, I'm just here to preach the gospel. I'm just trying to do the Lord's work. Well, here's the thing. It matters who our leaders are, just as people in Syria or Iran, if it matters, Christians, if it matters who their leaders are. So we do have to take an active role. And again, it doesn't mean you have to endorse from the pulpit, but boy, you should be educated on what you're voting on. And we, like I said, we're going to take away that weaponization of the IRS and of the federal government, and we're doing that piece by piece. And you'll see in the coming months that those policies coming out with the president making announcements, and we're very excited to be working on that and to really empower people of faith.
Excellent, excellent. Folks, that is Jenny Korn. She is the director of the White House Faith Office. And Jenny Korn, very quickly, let everybody know how they can keep up to speed with what you guys are doing in your office. How do they follow you? Where do they go to learn more?
Sure. You can follow me on X at Jenny S. Korn, Jenny, Jenny Skorn. But if you want to reach out to the White House Faith Office, we are at whitehousefaithoffice.who.eop.gov.
Outstanding. When I'm in the neighborhood, I'll drop you a line and come visit. Folks, Jenny Korn is at the White House. She's director of the Faith Office. She's a gentlewoman, a scholar, and a patriot. Jenny, thanks for being here.
Thank you so much, and buenas noches.
Buenas noches to you, too. Thank you so much, and God bless. And amigos, we continue with your thoughts, calls, conversation points, anything you want to talk about. I've been getting beat up a lot by our critics out there, so maybe there's a few of them we're going to get to. Plus, a few more things I want to talk about. Lots more in the news. Don't go anywhere.
This is America at Night with Rich Valdez. Call now, 833-4-VALDEZ. That's 833-482-5337. 833-4-VALDEZ. That's Valdez with an S.
After the guest leaves every night, we're doing open phones, kind of at the heartbeat of America. You sit there in this radio studio, and suddenly you hear voices. Mobile, Dallas, New York, Miami. And there's kind of a conglomeration of America all in one room.
Is an unconditional ceasefire in the air, sea, and land. at least for 30 days. This position has remained unchanged for the 3 months, and we consider it the basis for starting a peaceful resolution. A few days ago, we shared our documents with Russian side, but there has been no communication from them regarding their document until today. Only during the discussion today, Russians handed over its document to our delegation. Our teams will take a week to review the documents, and then we can coordinate further steps. On release of prisoners of war, we agreed to focus on specific categories rather than numbers. We agreed to exchange all for all, seriously wounded and seriously sick prisoners of war. Second category is young soldiers who are from 18 to 25 years old, all for all.
And yet they're not getting anywhere, right? They seem to, it's almost like you've got two people that are debating, right? And they're at war, but in debate, you're not really debating the person you're talking to, at least not in the media. You're making a case to the people that are watching. And that's what they're doing. They're like, oh, sure, we're happy to have a ceasefire. At least it seems that way. And then when push comes to shove, they don't do anything. And then they just blame the other guy. But a point that was made last week, one of our guests made, very good point. This stuff is a moneymaker for both of them. And again, this is, something we've known, right? For Ukraine, it was, keep getting money from the Americans and from other partners. And for Russia, it's keep feeding that war machine and you keep cranking them out. And again, this is, the United States has been doing this for a long time as well, right? With our military-industrial complex. However, none of them really seem like they want to stop this thing, right? They're paying lip service to President Trump, who, in my opinion, true pacifist, right? He never wants to have a military conflict. Uses it very sparingly. It's always a strategic strike at a big name target, like Soleimani or Abu al-Baghdadi, and others that he went and got him, and bing, bang, boom, over. He's not a fan of the protracted war. Matter of fact, this is what he ran on, right? No more forever wars. And most people like that. Most people don't like forever wars. Most people don't want their children to volunteer for service for forever wars. I understand that. I think that's up to your children to decide on what they want to do and how they want to serve their country. But irrespective of all that, bottom line is that's what's happening with this Russia-Ukraine stuff. And I want to know, what do you think? What are your thoughts here with this constant back and forth, with the constant bombing?
America at Night with Rich Valdez.
All right, amigos, welcome back. Rich Valdez here with you live. And the beauty of live radio, especially when the deep state is out to get you, right? We're trying to have a conversation about what's going on with everything in America at night, plus what's happening across the globe. And I'm looking forward to continuing that conversation with you all, for those of you that are sticking around. I know for some of you, the conversation ends here. But what's so interesting about being, in a position like this, where I get to talk to so many people at the same time, you get so many unique perspectives. And then you get feedback, right? Because some people don't hear the show live. They catch the podcast later, and then they start reacting. And I literally read the comments. On the weekends I go and I look at the comments. People send me messages and whatnot. And there was a couple of gentlemen, I think they're men, maybe they're women, a couple of individuals that, they're kind of obscure. Like, it's like ABC 123. Like, you don't know who it is. And they don't put a picture of their face as their profile picture online. But their complaint to me was that when they call in to say something, that I don't give them enough time. And I'm thinking, I can pretty much guarantee that I give more time than a lot of people do, because I really do like hearing these people, right? And I'm not afraid of them saying something that's outlandish and then disproving that. However, this is live radio, as you can tell tonight, right? We've had a number of very interesting moments in this live radio. And what happens in live radio is that everything is not just to the minute, it's to the second. And when you're doing stuff down to the second, you've got to get out on time. So ultimately, you just got to respect the clock. All right, amigos, we're going to continue our conversation. But for those of you where this is the last stop, take care, good night, and God bless you, America. I'm Rich Valdez.
This is America at Night with Rich Valdez. Call now, 833-4-VALDEZ. That's 833-482-5337. 833-4-VALDEZ. That's Valdez with an S. Live from the city that never sleeps. 17 miles from Madison Square Garden, New York City. It's America at Night with Rich Valdez. America's favorite late night talk program featuring interesting guests from around the world and calls from across America. And now, here is your host, Rich Valdez.
Hi there, good evening, and what's up, America? I am Rich Valdez, Valdez with an S, at Rich Valdez on all of the social media. Welcome to the Monday night edition of our program. We're live, we're national. Here's the phone number, 833-482-5337, 833-4-VALDEZ. And we're talking about a bunch of things tonight, right? Man, lots of stuff going on in the world, lots of stuff going on in America at night. A deal with Ukraine and Russia, them getting... trying to make a deal, yet they're striking each other. This one's striking that one's striking the other. Putin's not budging with the peace talks. Lots going on here. Then, what else we got? We've got this one. Let me see. The White House making funny comments here, saying many reporters in the White House are suffering from derangement syndrome. President Trump never misses an opportunity to troll. Over the weekend, he retweeted, or I should say reposted on Truth Social, a tweet from someone that said that Joe Biden was a android, like a cyborg, like a robot. And, of course, the New York Times, and right away, President Trump spreading conspiracy theories. Yeah, they never give a headline like President Trump really funny and trolling these idiots. And that's ultimately what happens, right? He throws them a little bit of something, and they take it. Hook, line, and sinker, they take the bait every single time. Anyway, we continue. And let me see. There was another big story here that I was looking at that I thought was very interesting today. Of course, the Trump administration is asking the Supreme Court to allow them to advance their plans to cut the federal workforce. Listen, you got to love that, right? Now, I know that there's been some difference of opinion between Elon Musk, who left on Friday, and El Trumpito and his big, beautiful bill, right? And listen, I get it. I'm not saying I agree with it. I just get it. And I think sometimes you have to be able to understand things from a perspective. It doesn't mean you have to agree with them. And I guess that may be a nuance or a one of those things that you just kind of have to learn by doing, things that you experience from being in the swamp. And maybe it's a bad thing, right? Maybe some of you listening going, I'm turning this guy off. He's one of them. I don't think I'm one of them. I think what it is, it's kind of like when you have a kid, right? You have a baby, and your baby's young, cute. I had two little girls, right? So you have these cute little pigtail girls, chubby cheeks. They love their daddy. They're just adorable. But then they become big, and then they become adults. And then they become more difficult than when they were cute and little with their pigtails. And it's our expectation that we need to manage, right? I've always said it would be really funny and fun at the same time, and maybe, tremendously productive if a talk radio person could become president. Well, I do believe Donald Trump is the first talk radio president. Whether or not he was ever in talk radio is irrespective of the point I'm making. The point that I'm making is that he was this, reality TV star, this media mogul, this real estate billionaire, hotelier and golf course designer that really told it the way he wanted to tell it, right? Down to ridiculing and belittling people, which is, very typical of talk radio. And because there's shtick that goes along with this, right? You talk about real things, serious issues, your opinions, but at times you make jokes. At times, you roast people. When I say my least favorite congresswoman from the Bronx and Queens, AOC, all out crazy, Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez, this is how I address her. When I say El Trompito, Donaldus Magnus, the 45th president of these United States, now 47th, El Presidente, right? It adds a little bit of levity for me because this stuff is exhausting. Just imagine a lot of you guys, you get to drive to work, you hear a little something in the morning, one of the great radio hosts in the morning that you're listening to on your way to work. You listen to a couple of, whether it's going to rain, where the traffic is, something that makes you laugh, right? Because morning radio is a lot of fun. Then you get to work and you get, a crap ton of things on your desk to do, and everybody's trying to weigh you down, bog you down. Your bill emails are coming in. Oh, I got to pay this. Oh, I got to pay that. Oh, I got to do this, right? All sorts of things. And then you go home and you listen to your drive time on the way home and you get, here's what happened today, right? But those of us in this world, at least me, that are, we're junkie people, right? We are news junkie people. We're always watching the news. We know what's going on. We try to stay aware of what's happening. It doesn't mean that this stuff doesn't wear on me the way it wears on you, right? Because I used to be you. I used to work in Trenton, New Jersey in the State House, and I would drive home, and I'd leave the office late, and on my drive home, I listened to a talk radio show host named Mark Levin. You guys may know him as the Great One. I eventually went on to work with him, but I used to listen to him for many years. For many years, I listened to Mark Levin, and in my listening, there's times where Levin is funny, and then there's times where he's like really angry. He's indignant about an issue that really gets under his skin. And that's not unique to Levin. This is talk radio in general. You get all the emotions. It runs the gamut. And I think we're the same way. So we get, you get home and you're like, man, I can't believe what these Russians are doing to the Ukraine. I can't believe the Ukrainians, how much money they took from us. I can't believe, right? And everybody's just can't believe everything. And we're fed up. And it's the last straw. We're done. We just want to have dinner, go to sleep, see our kids, right? And you get to this point, even in my business, where I don't mind looking at the news, but you get fatigue from all of this crazy, right? You get tired of hearing the blue-haired people coming at you with just nonsense left and right about the things they believe in, the things they disagree with you about. And I say all of that to say, when you get to those moments, what I do, I watch the Jersey Shore, right? The reality TV show. I watch anything I can to get my mind off of that. Something that, some might consider mindless or anything else. I think of it as a tremendous escape, incredibly entertaining, right? Some people listen to music. Others bury their heads in a book. Some, they watch sports TV all day long. Whatever you do, you do. But ultimately, I think it's very refreshing that we have a president who trolls the media, right? To kind of put things in perspective, to say, hold on, I'm doing all these things here, and I'm trying to literally create peace in the Middle East and all the other things Trump is doing. But at the same time, he takes a minute to tweet out the fact that Joe Biden, again, it wasn't from him directly, it was just a repost, but somebody saying that Joe Biden was a robot. And I can't help but laugh and say, all the things that he's got on his plate, he still finds time to troll Joe El Baboso Biden and the Democrats. Well, you got to love that. Anyway, we're going to continue our conversation on lots of things. There's a lot of things going on. Not a funny story in the next one. Last week I told you about a young woman. I was going to say a little girl, but she is a young woman. Just a year younger than my youngest daughter. Signed up as an Air Force cadet. And she was killed in a jet ski accident that occurred in Texas. And it actually occurred in Congresswoman Beth Van Duyne's district. So I want to get the scoop on what's happening with this, because the woman who killed her and then did a hit and run was an illegal alien. So keep it locked right here. We're coming right back with Congresswoman Beth Van Duyne, and we're going to hear about that and so much more. Don't go anywhere.
This is America at Night with Rich Valdez. Call now, 833-4-VALDEZ. That's 833-482-5337. 833-4-VALDEZ. That's Valdez with an S.
We'll Thank you, Rich, and thank you for everything. I know you very well, and I listen, but I have a lot of people that listen, and they love your show, and I appreciate it very much.
America at Night with Rich Valdez.
A 18-year-old Ava Moore was kayaking at Lake Grapevine when police say that she was struck and killed by a jet ski with 2 women on it. Authorities were looking for the driver of that jet ski, who they say fled the scene by jumping into a vehicle with a man at the park. As mentioned, we do know that police have Daikerlin Alejandra Gonzalez in custody, the suspect that they believe is tied to the death of Moore. Earlier today, I spoke to Ava's basketball coach at the Air Force Prep Academy and also one of her teammates. They say that she had just finished at the academy and was headed to basic training in a few weeks. They're obviously heartbroken by her death.
Well, there's a lot of sadness, a lot of hurt, a lot of pain. Obviously, none of us saw it coming, but and then it goes to anger that they left, anger that they didn't even see if she was okay.
So she just cared about not only her teammates, but her whole country. And I think that's like the hardest part, is that she really was going to be a difference maker in protecting us and serving us. And it's just hard knowing that she's out.
It's hard knowing that she was killed and seemingly in cold blood at this point, right? Not saying premeditated, but how do you get into an accident and just run away, not knowing if she's all right? You're talking about, this wasn't inside of a car where you can't see. This person was on a jet ski. They were obviously injured, and they just got the hell out of there. Why do you think they got out of there? They probably knew what they did. You want to add insult to injury? This woman was it's a young woman, right? 18 years old. Just nominated and accepted for the Air Force Academy as a cadet, and these other people not in the country legally. I mean, it's a horrible story all around, and this is part of why I think so many people, in particular, people I know, other Americans of Hispanic heritage, they support President Trump. They support the Republicans because they don't want these situations to occur anymore. It's very difficult to get away from the idea that if we had more border security, better control of our border, less illegal immigration, we'd have less illegal immigrants in the country. And you'd have less instances like these. Now, I'm not trying to villainize people that are in this country illegally. They did what they did and they're here. I'm not trying to laud them and praise them either. But I am trying to say that if they weren't here in this situation, this wouldn't have happened. I want to get to the bottom of this, get an update on it, and also talk about some other things that are going on with one of our favorites here, Congresswoman Beth Van Duyne from Texas. Congresswoman, welcome back.
Hey, Rich. Good evening. How are you doing tonight?
I'm all right. Yeah, I mean, it's a horrible story. Yeah. Otherwise, I'm fine. But it really, for lack of a better word, it really sucks that this is going on. It's a horrible
story. It's a horrible story. It is a heartbreaking, heart-wrenching story. This was a woman who had so much to look forward to in her life. Everybody that I've talked to has described her as a leader, as genuine, steadfast, determined, smart, ambitious, just dedicated to her faith, dedicated to her country. We nominated her not just once, but twice to the Air Force Academy. She had just finished Air Force preparatory school. She was about to leave for basic training in a couple of weeks, and then she was going to go in the fall to be in the Air Force Academy. Her family was so proud of her. Everybody that she worked with in school, this was a woman who was going to make a difference in our country. And her life was tragically struck down recklessly by 2 people who should never have been in the country. Illegally here, who absolutely had to know what they did was wrong, because not only did they hit her, they left her.
Yeah, and I just want to jump in here. I just want to say, I saw the video. I saw the cell phone camera of them leaving with this guy. And I mean, they were getting the heck out of Dodge. And people were saying, "What are you doing? What's going on? What, you're just going to run away?" And they did. They got in the car and they did the dip. Amazing.
And then hit 2 cars. And then it hit 2 cars on their way out.
Wow. I didn't even know that detail.
No, they got into 2 accidents on the way out, and they just kept booking. So, I am very pleased, and I'm very grateful for the response, the quick response of law enforcement to get these 2 people in custody. But it's not enough. We need to get everybody round up who had anything to do with this case. I spoke with the father, Robert Moore, Ava's dad, last week, and I'll tell you, they are heartbroken. But when I shared with him, I think your frustration and how angry I was for them, for her, he just said, "Look, I am going to remember her the way she would want me to remember her. It's going to be positive. It's going to be a celebration." And I think you've seen so many people come out just in support. But this is a family of faith, and my heart goes out to them. Our prayers go out to them, but it's not enough. And I contacted Tom Homan, and I just said, "Do what you need to do. Let me know how we can help." And we need to help. And part of what this one big beautiful bill is doing is it's actually providing Immigration and Customs Enforcement with the support, the resources that they need to continue their efforts. They're doing a great job. But the last 4 years, our borders have been open so much. So many illegals have come in. We know of at least 2 million gotaways, which are people who are not just coming to the border, who they could give themselves up. They could get free, room, free health care, free cell phones, free medical care. But these are people who's paid money to get them covertly into our country. So these are really bad people who are avoiding law. And we have no idea where they've gone, where they came from, what harm they want to do to our country. But we do know that they are here, and that we need to do what we can to let Tom Homan and Christy know, have the resources that they need to continue the job that they're doing.
Yeah, I think you're 100% right. And folks, we're on with Congresswoman Beth Van Duyne from Texas. And, Congresswoman Beth Van Duyne, I look at this stuff, and I saw a clip today of the ICE director explaining why ICE officers are wearing masks while they're doing these enforcement operations. And it's hard to win around here nowadays, right? You've got them trying to deport the people that are criminal, right? We're not talking about, hey, I work in a restaurant, I'm trying to make a better life. Not that that's okay, but nobody's going after them per se. These are people that are criminals, like these people that are, killing people and fleeing. And it just amazes me that people will call these ICE people all sorts of names. I saw one video, the guy says, "You guys all deserve bullets in your head," calling them all sorts of vulgarities. And then on top of that, you've got others that are taking their photos, doing reverse image searches, posting what they do, where they work, who their children are, what their children's social media is. I mean, this is pretty serious stuff.
It's very serious stuff. And if you think about going 4 years back when, you had more suicides of folks who are working at the Border and Customs and Border Patrol, because it is a hard job. They were being called domestic terrorists by their own government. They were being accused of infractions from just doing their job and trying to enforce the laws. These are people who want to protect our borders, who want to make sure that our communities are safe. And this is the kind of abuse that they're taking. And again, my heart goes out to them. They have a hard job. They're doing it well. And they are not getting the support and the recognition that they deserve. And this has been going on for too long. You even have elected officials who are doing this. And this has been going on for at least 5 years. And if you consider, back when AOC during the first Trump administration was down at the border crying, quote, kids in cages. Those were cages that Obama built, because we had so many people coming here that were minors that were coming across the border. But it's just crazy. It's insane. And it's very difficult to believe that we've got elected officials in this country who would not want to protect, but they're not doing that.
Congresswoman Beth Van Duyne, we're coming right back. Stick with me, folks. Rich Valdez, don't go anywhere.
For everything. I know you very well, and I listen, but I have a lot of people that listen, and they love your show, and I appreciate it very much.
America at Night with Rich Valdez.
And this morning, we have a brand new CNN poll that shows what voters are thinking about both parties. David Chalian joins me here at the Magic Wall to take us through this poll. So, David, what are the key takeaways?
Yeah. This is where we left off on election night 2024, but we wanted to get a sense of where Americans are right now. And one key trend we're looking at here, Manu, is should the government do more, or is the government trying to do too much? 58% in our new poll of Americans now say the government should do more. That is a 30-year high that we have seen. So what's driving that? Why are so many fewer Americans saying that the government is trying to do too much? Well, as you might imagine, we're seeing that movement among Republicans who are in charge of all aspects of government right now. Look at this huge drop. From August of 23, 73% of Republicans said the government was doing too much. That was when Joe Biden was president. Now it's down to 57%. But we also see this decrease in those saying government's doing too much among independents as well. We also wanted to test where the country stood with the parties on various issues, okay? Crime and policing is by far and away the Republicans' best advantage. R plus 13 now, R plus 14 a couple years ago. But look at the economy and immigration, two key Trump issues. You see, it's still a Republican advantage, but you see that advantage is narrowing on both of those key issues. This gets to what Amy was saying, I think, about some of the anxiety people have about the economy over the tariffs that we were talking about.
So that's CNN reporting that people are not thrilled with Democrats. And I thought this was pretty interesting because it's mainly Democrats because of another poll that I was looking at that reinforces this. But ultimately, they're not interested in the government being involved in things. And that sounds like a very, very conservative idea to me. I want to come back to your calls momentarily. But first, I want to continue our conversation with Congresswoman Beth Van Duyne from Texas. Congresswoman, when you hear this CNN report, what do you think?
Well, I think it's welcome to Crazyville. I mean, when you look at what Democrats have done and what they've promised to do, it's insane. They're all about this. This is a party that is all about extremes, whether or not it's talking about the trans movement, whether or not it's talking about how hateful domestic terrorists are, who are parents just caring about their kids. They hate men. They love, the Hamas. You look at who they support, illegal criminal aliens over, parents who are fighting for their kids. You look at what this party has become, and it's no wonder that people are saying enough is enough. And I get it. I mean, when we think about right now why you have Republicans saying that the government needs to do more, it's because they're looking at what the Trump administration is doing. And it's like every couple of hours they're getting something more accomplished. We are working hand in glove with this administration. And I think, on one side you've got the Democrats who are hell-bent on ruining this country, who seem to hate this country and are doing everything that they can, to sell this country out to our foreign adversaries. And on the flip side, you've got, Trump who's running the country. You've got Republicans in Congress. We are developing generationally important reforms. I mean, we're trying right now with our bill to lower taxes for working families. We're trying to expand economic growth and opportunity. We're trying to secure our country from violent criminal aliens, as we talked about earlier. And we're fulfilling that mandate that American people voted for in November. I can see the frustration. They want us to work faster. It has taken decades for Democrats to add this amount of debt, to add this amount of crime, to add this amount of people's dependence on the government. It's going to take a little time to unwind it, but I think we are on a tremendous start, a great trajectory.
Folks, we're on with Congresswoman Beth Van Duyne from Texas. And, I think you're right. I think people are interested in seeing what Trump is doing. They're also interested in seeing the government get out of the way because they saw what was happening with Biden. And the whole thing is just very interesting. I think we're experiencing so many firsts in our government and the reaction from voters. But what's more interesting to me is that there seems to be a shift in the media. And I don't know if that's the media waking up saying, oh, let's do the right thing today. I think that's the media saying, wow, we're getting left behind. We just had this massive IPO of Newsmax TV, which became a major player very, very quickly because people want to hear what they have to offer.
Well, they want to see. They want to see what's actually going on. I mean, they've had the mass media, and they've had Democrats who have lied to them. Right? Remember, inflation is transitory. Our border is secure. Job numbers are up. And worst of all, they kept, propping up basically, an auto pen vegetable in the White House, telling us how great Joe Biden was and how he's at the top of his game. Enough with the lies. People ultimately see through it. And especially when it starts affecting them, and you think about the hundreds of thousands of people who died as a result of fentanyl, when you see the crime increase in rural communities, when you see stories, headlines, again, in these smaller communities of child trafficking, drug trafficking, gang activity, sex trafficking, this wakes people up. And I think it just came to a point where people were absolutely sick of it. And the mainstream media couldn't lie about it any longer. You're seeing these books coming out. You're seeing them finally report. And I think it's too little too late. You're going to have news stations that are actually reporting the truth. They're being honest with people, letting them know what's going on, having unbiased reports. And that's what people want to hear. That's what people have wanted to hear. And I think they've been poisoned. They've been blinded by basically so many in the mass media that all had the same Democrat talking points.
Yeah, I agree with that. Now, Congresswoman BVD, listen to this. I know that you are on the Ways and Means Committee in the House, and you're on the Tax Policy Subcommittee, Subcommittee on Trade. There's a number of really interesting ones here. The DOGE Committee, Delivering Outstanding Government Efficiency Caucus. And I think the big, beautiful bill has, been in question for a lot of people. On one hand, and I'll give you my perspective. On one hand, I say, wow, I can't believe they were able to pull that off. There was a lot of people in opposition, but they did it. Now it goes to the Senate. And I know you don't always have the insight of your colleagues in the Senate, but where do you think we go from here? Because we need a win.
Yeah, no, I absolutely agree. And that was not an easy bill from the House to pass as well. I mean, you have people who represent 435 different districts, and you look at the Republicans in our caucus, and you got some that are representing, purple, almost blue districts, who've gotten elected, and those who represent really, really, really very strong, very conservative districts. And whether or not it's the SALT provisions, whether or not it's a child tax credit, whether or not we're looking at spending, and that was one of my number one things. I think we're spending way too much. But at the same token, this bill provides an opportunity to grow the economy. I don't know if you saw the newest predictions, but it's looking at 4.8% growth in the economy.
Yeah.
And what that means to small businesses, what that means for job opportunities, what that means for working Americans. The fact that you're going to be able to take that and invest in your future. We've already seen $10 trillion of new investment for advanced manufacturing or new energy production rolling into this country. That is what we want. Now, I will tell you, you've seen some of the fights that have gone on. It's ugly, but this is what it's like to make sausage. You are seeing it, and this is what transparency looks like. This is what transparency looks like. These are not bills that are being discussed and hidden from the American public and coming out, and you can read it once it's passed. That's what Democrats do. Republicans are actually arguing, and we're disagreeing with each other on policy differences. And we have different ways of being able to think that the best way to be able to help the American people, to earn more, to keep more, and be empowered to care for their families. It is different by district. But the fact is that this is what transparency looks like. This is the fight that we're going to have. I am hopeful that the Senate is going to be able to cut some of the spending. It's going to look at Medicaid waste, fraud, and abuse and address it. And is going to be able to continue the tax provisions from the Tax Cuts and Jobs Act that were so effective in increasing our economic growth. They have got to keep those tax cuts, whether or not it's research and development to make sure that we're looking at American innovation, whether or not it's depreciation and expensing, which allows business to invest in their future and the growth. They have got to get those provisions because otherwise they expire at the end of this year. And if that happens, you're going to see businesses close. You're going to see people's taxes increase, beyond anything that we've ever seen in our nation's history. So we have got to get this bill passed. I am hopeful that the Senate can do it in such a way that it comes back to the House, we pass it, and it's on the president's desk by 4th of July.
All right, 4th of July. Amigos, that's Congresswoman Beth Van Duyne. Now, Congresswoman, let everybody know how they can find you and keep up to speed with everything you're doing in the House.
Beth Van Duyne, we are on all of the major social media posts, whether or not it's X, whether or not it's Instagram, Facebook. Come find us, come follow us, sign up for our newsletter, Beth Van Duyne for Texas.com. We would love to hear from you and be able to keep in touch.
Outstanding. Well, as always, you're a gentlewoman, a scholar, and a patriot. I'm grateful for your time. Thanks for being here.
Hey, Rich, thank you so much for what you do, and I hope you have a great night.
You too. God bless. And amigos, your calls and more coming up right now. Ohio, Connecticut, Idaho, and more. Don't go anywhere.
This is America at Night with Rich Valdez. Call now, 833-4-VALDEZ. That's 833-482-5337. 833-4-VALDEZ. That's Valdez with an S.
Well, you're a true patriot and a Latino voice. We need more of you in America. And keep up your good work, Rich.
America at Night with Rich Valdez.
All right, amigos, welcome back. And I want to go to your thoughts, calls, reactions to the phones. We go 833-4-VALDEZ, 833-482-5337. Let's go to Debbie, Canton, Ohio, WNIR.
Hey.
Debbie, good evening.
Yes, thank you, Rich. I just want to say that when I was young, I grew up in southeast Ohio. There were black people down there. I'm sorry, people of color. But the only one was my bus driver, Bobby Hill, and his wife, Bobby Hill, and his family all went to our church. That was the only family of color, and we went to
In your
church
area.
with them. Yes, in my area, and he's a bus driver, and he was great, sweetest man I ever knew. And then beyond that, I didn't really know any people of color until I went to college, and I met a man who became my best man. He was Muslim from Afghanistan. He was the best man at my wedding.
Nice.
And he was Muslim, and he was great, and he still is great. He's still a good friend of the family. And then, beyond that, another Muslim from Iran coached my son from the age of 5 years old, coached him in soccer, and got him into a scholarship, full scholarship for college, okay? That's how good he was.
Congratulations.
And then, yeah, I know. That's great. And then, for over 20 years, a girl did my hair, Nellie, from Palestine. She was Palestinian. I want to get over people hating people for what their religion, or it's got to stop, okay?
Well, listen, I'm the first one to agree with you, Debbie. When I remember, look, I was sitting right where I am when it was October 8th, right? And I was talking about the attack that Hamas had launched on Israel, killing, 1,100, 1,000 people, young people that were at a music conference only because they were Jewish, only because they hated them so much. And I thought to myself, this is horrible, right? You know, I'm a dad. I know you have kids, and I'm a dad of two young people, you know, a teenager and a young 20-something. And I thought to myself, that's all my kids do is go to concerts. It was brutal to hear that. And then to hear that there were babies that were burned alive and beheaded and old women that were raped. And this was truly just like, we hate your guts. And it was a very primitive style attack, but it was an attack nonetheless. And taking these people as hostages, right? The Israelis have never taken any people from the other side as hostage. They've taken people that are enemy combatants, right? They're actually fighting, not people that are, innocent bystanders. So I'm in total agreement with you. What's going on in Gaza is a disaster. What they did on October 7th, absolutely horrific. Hate is never the answer, right? It just isn't. But you're in a position, at least in that part of the world, where they're at a stalemate. And it looks like we're getting to a similar position between the Russians and the Ukrainians, where people that have differences and are learning or already do despise each other can't come to an agreement, right? Think about it. I have an ex-wife. I don't hate my ex-wife. But for years, we didn't get along. And, we disagreed on a number of things. And, took a long time to agree on certain things. And I don't think we still agree on a lot of things. But it's a very respectful, cordial relationship most of the time. And I'm making, an analogy that I hope most people can relate to. Ultimately, this is what we got to do, right? We have to be able to work with other people. The issue becomes, how do you work with people, Debbie, when they're kidnapping old people and keeping them hostage? They're taking young people. They're hiding. They're shooting rockets, and then they hide in a mosque. They hide in a hospital. They hide in a daycare facility. And this is what Hamas terrorists have been doing. This is brutal, right? They don't even fight fair. So it's an ugly situation all around. And I agree with you 100%. People have to stop hating each other. And I understand if you come and you burn babies in my village, I'm likely going to hate you too. But we do have to, I pray for peace for everybody involved because it's an ugly situation. Debbie, I want to thank you for the call. I've got to go to a break right here, but we're coming right back. My man Tony from Canada, Joe in Bethel, Connecticut, WLAD, WVMT on the line there. We've got Missouri on the line too, KRMS. We've got a bunch of callers. Don't go anywhere.
This is America at Night with Rich Valdez.
Rich Valdez, who again will do a fine job, and I know you'll enjoy listening to him.
This is America at Night with Rich Valdez.
All right, let's go to the phones. Montreal, Canada, listening on WVMT out of Vermont. Great station there, very strong signal. Let's go to Tony. Tony, what's up, my man?
How you doing, Rich? I'm just a little bit amazed that the United States is actually broadcasting on a national radio station that people are burning other human beings with political and terrorist intent. I thought that we lived in the year 2025, but it's obvious that we're going back to 1930s and the extremism of Nazism, etc. But, the whole thing is that I think the United States is on an agenda to stop Trump. The BLMism, as I said before, the new BLMism is the Hamasism, or is the inculcation of or the inculcating of university students with limited knowledge of Palestine or the history of Palestine, and promoting lawfare to block.
Well,
Trump
listen,
at
Tony,
every
you're 100% right when you're talking about lawfare. I mean, we've seen what they did to Trump, what they do all around. And the first part of what you said, I spent 20 minutes. I agree with you. When I opened the show, I can't believe that I was opening the show with some guy was flame throwing people, and people ended up dead because they were Jewish. I mean, absolute insanity is what's going on. Tony, I appreciate it, brother. Shout out to you guys at WVMT. I could talk to you for days, and you're 100% right. The bottom line here is this is a sad day. And the next time we talk, Tony, I want to talk a little bit about how things look in Canada. But we got Brad, Bowling Green, Kentucky. When we come back, I'm going to try and get to you, plus some of the headlines of the day. Joe, Andrea, stick with me, folks. Lots of people on the line. The phone lines are flashing. We're coming right back. Don't go anywhere, amigos. 833-482-5337. 833-4-Valdez is the phone number. And, of course, make sure that if you are trying to catch up with any of our interviews, you have to make sure you go to richvaldez.com, because that's where you can get absolutely everything. Don't go anywhere. I'm Rich Valdez.
Live from the city that never sleeps. 17 miles from Madison Square Garden, New York City. It's America at Night with Rich Valdez. America's favorite late night talk program, featuring interesting guests from around the world and calls from across America. And now, here is your host, Rich Valdez.
Rich Valdez, hi there, good evening, and what's up, America? Our telephone number, 833-482-5337, 833-4-Valdez. And I'm going to get to your calls momentarily. We are live and national, 7 minutes past the top of the hour, and I'm looking forward to speaking with you. I see we got calls from St. Cloud, Minnesota, Bowling Green, Kentucky, Bethel, Connecticut, Stover, Missouri, KRMS. And I want to get to you sooner rather than later, so stand by with me. But a couple of things we need to discuss, right? Because, of course, we had plenty going on here. CNN poll from Harry Enton. You hear in the media, or at least on social media, you see people scrolling through their social media. They're on the IG, they're on Facebook, whatever, and they're like, hey, what's going on here? I can't believe I voted for Trump. I take it back. I recant. I'm rescinding. Well, could it be further from the truth? CNN put the numbers together, and it turned out it was something like less than 3%, maybe 2% of people that actually had any type of voter remorse. Otherwise, people truly were on board with what's going on with El Trompito Donaldus Magnus.
They regret what they did back in 2024. I'm here to tell you, what percentage would change their vote to a different candidate? We're talking just 2%, just 2%. That's not even a wide spot on the road. So the bottom line is this. If there's some idea out there that Trump voters are going around, man, I wish I had voted for Kamala Harris instead of Donald Trump, the numbers say that is a fanciful universe. It really, for the most part, does not exist.
Doesn't exist. It's fake, it's phony, and fraud. You know, that's combined with another CNN poll that just came out where you've got people saying that they want the government to get more done. They don't really trust the Democrats the way they did. I think this is good news for Trump. He's making quite an impact on voters. 58% of Americans now say that the government should do more to solve the country's problems. Now, I don't know that that's necessarily where I want to be. I don't want Americans thinking that it's the government's job to fix everything. I think a lot of it's our job. But ultimately, I think it's a good thing, right? Because a lot of these problems are self-inflicted wounds, right? When you look at everything that the Department of Government Efficiency did, like the Doge service, USDS, they pulled the plug on USAID. Now, USAID was a massive clearinghouse for many called money laundering. I won't argue at that point because I remember 2018 or so sitting with somebody who was very much in the know, and he was telling me, we've really got to, during the Burisma scandal, so maybe it was 2019, but either way, he was telling me we have to keep our eye on the money, follow the money. And as we looked at this follow the money theory, it was more than clear all of the players involved were getting some sort of money from USAID. The question is why? And the bigger question is, do most voters know that the government doesn't produce any money other than what they print? That's horrific. Not that they don't make money, that they don't produce any money, right? They don't earn any money. They don't create products. Some state governments make stuff, right? License plates that inmates will usually work on. Different items, right? Many of the jails in New Jersey, the food, the furniture, all made by those in state prison, and they supply like the county jails and whatnot. Got it. But that's not the case in the federal government. The federal government just takes tax dollars and redistributes them to state governments and to people. So I think now that people see this going on, they're like, wow, you're spending all this money. Even if publicly, in front of their friends, they still have to say things like, yeah, those damn Republicans. I think privately behind the scenes, they're like, yeah, El Trompito, my man, right? Because people want to see the Trump tax cuts extended. I'm old enough to remember, 2017, 18, 19, 20, when the GDP was higher than 4, when the big joke that was running around was President Obama at the time going, yeah, what's he going to do? Wave a magic wand? And Trump, all the memes with Trump with a magic wand, right? Because he said he'd bring some manufacturing back and he would make the GDP go up and all these things that Obama and the Democrats didn't think could happen. But there's a difference when you are a person that runs a business, and a business is a thing that has to make money. I ran a barbershop for a bunch of years and a cell phone store for a while. And I got to tell you, and now I have other business, but as a barber, I learned very quickly, you got to make money. As a cell phone person, I had some, people that would come in and help me part-time or whatever. You had to make money to pay your workers. You had to make money to buy new equipment. It was very different than the barbershop because I had to re-up on phones and leather cases and card chargers. And back then, before we had the little pods that go in your ears, we had, headsets and stuff like that. There was no Bluetooth. So the point I'm making is when you know what it's like to earn $1, when you have to make a company and pay people and stuff like that, this is a big thing, right? You realize, man, I don't get to just show up and take a sick day and do whatever and still get that paycheck. You actually got to earn it. And that is very different than what we see in our government. These are people that are like, no, you go and earn whatever you want. We will take it from you by way of a confiscatory tax, and then voila. So I want to talk a little bit about some Doge. I want to talk about the latest with the crazy flame-throwing attack on the Jews that occurred in Boulder, Colorado over this weekend. I want to talk about just the insanity that we're seeing at the border. ICE agents being targeted for doing their jobs, and they're being doxxed. Their families are being doxxed. Their children's social media accounts are being publicized and doxxed so that they can, obviously be harassed or harmed or accosted in one way or another. I mean, all of these things are going on. And our media's not only incurious about it, but I would say borderline complicit. So we're going to talk about that. We're going to talk about what's going on with the Doge Committee. And there's a really good investigative article on another waster in the government, right? And I say this from my own experience. When I was a kid growing up, all my friends that got in trouble with the law would find a way out and go, they go, oh, no, I'm not doing time. I ended up going to Job Corps because, they were teenagers. And rather than put them in jail, they'd give them a chance to go and learn a trade at Job Corps, which is a federal program. But the problem was none of them ever came out of Job Corps and were like, oh, I became an electrician. I'm sure it happened to a handful of people, but a small handful. Most of my friends just came out, more emboldened because they were in a kind of uncontrolled jail environment. They were like, oh, yeah, there was girls there. There was this there. I met so-and-so. They make new connections to do worse things than they went in for. It was just really, really interesting. And so when I heard about this, I said, oh, my gosh, this stuff is still going on all these years later. So I want to talk about that with Luke Rosiak. Luke Rosiak is with the Daily Wire. He's their government efficiency reporter, and he's going to join us straight ahead. Don't go anywhere.
This is America at Night with Rich Valdez.
So what an honor, really, to join you and your listeners tonight.
America at Night with Rich Valdez.
All right, amigos, welcome back. Now, I want you to hear this report about the Job Corps, because Job Corps is a federal program that helps students. And we've got this report from Fox 2. Check this out.
But first on Fox, a sudden shakeup by the Department of Labor is sending shockwaves through youth workforce programs across the country, and the ripple effect is hitting some families hard here in our area. Fox 2's Taylor Harris reports from one local center where people were upset and confused tonight.
We've been outside the St. Louis Job Corps Center for hours on Friday, and what we've been seeing is truly heartbreaking. Students have been escorted off campus by security, many with all of their belongings, while concerned family members rushed to pick them up. Security told us we aren't allowed on the property without regional approval, and employees can't speak on camera. But the emotional toll playing outside the gates is impossible to ignore. By June 30th, the U.S. Department of Labor is pausing operations at all contractor operator Job Corps centers, including here in Missouri. The Department of Labor says this is due to a $213 million deficit, rising safety concerns, and low graduation rates.
Low graduation rates, rising safety concerns, you name it, all sorts of bad things are coming out of this program. So obviously, if it doesn't work, pull the plug. Elon, where are you? He's only been gone for one day. We miss him already. I want to get the scoop on this from an investigative reporter who's been doing it, and he's been doing this for a long time. Luke Rosiak, welcome, sir.
Hey, Rich. Thanks for having me.
You bet. Now, Luke, tell me a little bit about, was this something an editor assigned to you? Was it just part of your beat, or was this something you got a tip on? You said, I got to get to the bottom of this.
Oh, I've been following wasteful spending for a long time. I remember 10, 15 years ago, it was a big thing on YouTube. People would upload Job Corps fights, and it's like a prison in this place. They just beat each other, and everybody else gathers around and laughs and cheers. And it was like a meme, like in the early 2010s. Sort of the Job Corps fights swept YouTube. And around that time, there was significant investigative journalism from places like CBS, where they were interviewing the contractors who run these places, and they were talking about how the numbers were all fake. So there's a history of this program not working for a long time, and finally there is an appetite to do something about that. And I do think, somebody like Elon Musk, we've got to rely on not only the innovative practices that people like Doge are doing, but also we've got decades of knowledge about the programs that don't work, but many of them have just gone on anyway. And this is a program that's gone on since 1964. Everybody's kind of known it hasn't worked for most of that time, and finally something has actually been done about it.
Yeah, listen, I remember all of that, and I remember even before the YouTube stuff with the fights, I had friends that went there and were getting into fights. They came out of Job Corps tougher than they went in. And I thought to myself, hearing somebody went to Job Corps was like hearing somebody say they went away to the state pen. It was just really that bad. So you have this interest in Job Corps. You've seen the waste, the fraud, and abuse that has occurred in the past. And where do we go from here? What's the current situation? Because it seems like they're just recklessly spending here.
Yeah, well, so that's the news. I mean, I did a couple stories recapping the problems, but then finally the most recent story I did was kind of something's been done about this story, which is most of the program is shut down now. I mean, they're going to save like over $1 billion. I mean, this program is $1.7 billion, and the Trump administration has now terminated all the contracts with the companies that run these job centers. So there's 130 campuses, and they're done. The only exception is that some of the campuses are run by the government, like the Department of Agriculture runs some. I think a lot of them are like Forest Service, like fighting fires in national parks and things like that, which mostly seems fine. Send these kids out in the wilderness and do some hard work, and there's not a profit motive for some contractor to get rich. But what the Trump administration, I think, correctly identified here is there are these government contractors that are charging money per head and basically taking these troubled youth from the inner cities and treating them like a cash cow. And the more they can bring into these facilities and then spit out the other end, the more money they get. And so there's a profit incentive here that was really corrupting. And so they have used their authority to terminate contracts for convenience. And they just said, we're just going to cut off all these contractors and just send the students home. So that's big news. And, even with all the cuts we've seen in the Trump administration, talking about the better part of $2 billion is a pretty big one. We'll run into the same thing that we've seen with everything else, which is maybe a judge could overturn it. More likely what will happen is, these cuts aren't permanent. The Job Corps still exists as a government agency, so we'll have to see if Congress does anything about it and actually removes appropriations for the upcoming year.
I hear that. Folks, we're on with Luke Rosiak. Luke Rosiak is the government reporter at the Daily Wire. And, Luke, I think this whole thing is it's important for people to know, A, what's going on, and B, that we're making progress, right? I think for many years, at least conservatives have always called for less government, smaller government, and more transparency. And I think this is the first time in a very long time that we're actually getting those things. So I'm really happy about that. Now, I also want to get your take on a couple of different things from the anti-Semitism that's happening on college campuses to overall, your take on a couple of the big headlines here, because we talk about anti-Semitism and we've got people that are being roasted alive. And I hate to be melodramatic, but it's really, I just can't believe I'm talking about this. So we're going to get to that straight ahead with Luke Rosiak. Luke Rosiak is our guest, and he is the government efficiency reporter at the Daily Wire. And of course, amigos, if you have missed any portion of the program tonight and you want to hear one of our interviews, then make sure that you go to richvaldez.com. Of course, that's Valdez with an S, where you can access the current episode. You can just hit play and listen to it. You can also just subscribe to the podcast right from that page if you want to. If you don't want to subscribe, and again, subscription's absolutely free. So plenty of ways to listen to the program. You could even say, Alexa, play Rich Valdez, and that'll set off some smart speakers all over the place. Anyway, folks, we're going to come right back with your thoughts, calls, reactions, and all of the callers that are on hold, as well as some new ones that are calling in, and wrapping up with Luke Rosiak straight ahead. I'm Rich Valdez.
Is night. This is Rich Valdez.
All right, amigos, welcome back. And I want to continue our conversation with Luke Rosiak. Now, Luke Rosiak, the big story of the weekend of today has been the attack that occurred. This man murdered somebody, set people on fire. And this has been a big deal. Well, today, Bishop Gruhl, the acting U.S. Attorney for Colorado, made an announcement about what they're charging this man with. Listen to this.
My office has charged Mohammed Sabri Solomon, age 45, with the commission of a hate crime under 18 U.S.C. Section 249. When that offense includes attempted murder, the statutory maximum federal sentence is life in prison. No one should ever be subjected to violence of any kind, but our laws recognize that such violence is particularly pernicious when someone is targeted because of their race, their religion, or their national origin. According to our complaint and the charges brought by DA Doherty's office, Mr. Solomon stated that he had been planning this attack for a year, and he acted because he hated what he called the Zionist group. But what the charges allege that he did was to throw Molotov cocktails at a group of men and women, some of them in their late 80s, burning them as they peacefully walked on a Sunday to draw attention to Israeli hostages held in Gaza. And when he was interviewed about the attack, he said he wanted them all to die. He had no regrets, and he would go back and do it again.
No regrets, he would do it again. Luke Rosiak, we're seeing attacks in Washington, D.C. of people being murdered after a function because they work at the Israeli embassy. We're seeing this attack that happened over the weekend, people being set on fire with a flamethrower. And this is, I can't remember the last time I saw this happening. I saw a woman, on the news getting set on fire in New York City by an illegal alien. And not that that was any better. But it was very random. The guy, I think, was a lunatic. This wasn't random. This was an attack planned for a year, and it seems like every week we have a new murder where somebody's screaming "Free Palestine." What's going on? Where does this come from?
Yeah, I mean, of course, this guy is an illegal immigrant, and he, the poor woman, survives the Holocaust and winds up getting killed in Colorado by an illegal immigrant. But it's not just the illegal immigrants doing it. We're also training people to espouse these same phrases on college campuses. And one of the stories that I wrote just today actually is about a big lawsuit that was filed against George Washington University in D.C., which is kind of the college known for training State Department diplomats. And so instead of training these people to represent the U.S. interest, you remember GWU was one of the campuses that was most insanely taken over alongside Columbia University a while back, where they were occupying the campus.
Right.
They had the statue of George Washington, and they put the Palestinian whatever, thing on him. And, basically they're chanting in the streets, "We are Hamas." And the leadership of George Washington University was basically afraid of them, and they made ultimatums to the president of the university, and the university just folded. And so the lawsuit alleges that the faculty of some of these universities are basically training Americans to share these insane third world blood feud beliefs that you would think would be confined to psychotic illegal immigrants who are setting people on fire. Certainly the rhetoric is identical. Hopefully the means of these campus radicals will not be the same, but even at GW, they were throwing rocks through the window of vans that had positive messages about Jews belong here and so on. And so what this lawsuit alleges is that the entire Middle East studies department within the George Washington University school that educates diplomats was taken over by radical activists, not academics, but activists. And this lawsuit is very long. It goes into like 180 pages of evidence where it's talking about how these professors are like, if you don't believe that Israel is committing a genocide, then you can't be part of our academic discipline. So that's not an academic
no
discipline at all.
heterodoxy, right? No ability to disagree, no ability to think for yourself. Just do as I say or else. Luke Rosiak, I want people to read your article. Where do they go to check out the article?
Go to thedailywire.com, or you can check me out on X at Luke Rosiak, Rosiak.
Outstanding, brother. I appreciate you being here. I got to take a pause here. But, folks, check him out, Luke Rosiak. Follow him online. Check him out at the Daily Wire. Excellent piece. I want to thank you for being here, brother.
Thanks, Rich.
You bet, bro. And, amigos, coming right back. Your calls and more. Don't go anywhere.
This is America at Night with Rich Valdez. Call now, 833-4VALDEZ. That's 833-482-5337. 833-4VALDEZ. That's Valdez with an S. Head of hair in live late night radio 6 years in a row. It's Rich Valdez.
All right, amigos, welcome back to the phones we go. Now, I wanted you to hear something because over the weekend, the Secretary Scott Bessent was on with Margaret Brennan. And let me tell you, he did a great job. Number 16, he talks about, again, Scott Bessent is the Treasury Secretary. He was on Face the Nation, and Margaret Brennan was trying to corner him and take him to a place of fake, phony, and fraudness, and he had to set her straight. Listen to this.
So should companies cut back on the amount of goods they have on their shelves or just on their profitability?
That's a decision company by company, Margaret. And I had a long discussion with Doug McMillan, the CEO of Walmart, and they're going to do what's right for them.
But for consumers, the reality is there will either be less inventory or things at higher prices or both.
Margaret, when we were here in March, you said there was going to be big inflation. There hasn't been any inflation. Actually, the inflation numbers are the best in 4 years. So why don't we stop trying to say this could happen and wait and see what does happen?
Just trying to gauge for people planning ahead here.
Yeah, people planning ahead. What she really means is we're just trying to plan here to sabotage you because we're the left and things are working out better than we expected. So we've got to continually try to crap on you. This is the problem with the people in the media, right? And listen, I get it. I'm associated in the media, right? I'm an opinion commentator and whatnot. But I don't pretend like she does to be a journalist. I'm not a journalist. I am a biased, conservative Puerto Rican guy from New York that's going to tell you what I think. She pretends to be some sort of arbiter of truth and impartiality. That's why I say she's a fake, phony, and fraud, in the words of the immortal Bob Grant. Because you should not, right? You should not hold yourself out to be like, I'm telling you the truth, giving you the real scoop here, when you're really just trying to make them look stupid. And people will say, no, she's just trying to do her job. She's just trying to, speak truth to power. That's one of the biggest lies they've ever told. She can ask tough questions without trying to make it so accusatory and as seem as if he did something. Good for him for being able to hold his own and understanding math as the Treasury Secretary so that he can prove her wrong. And I'm glad he did. But again, what a classic example of how the media works and the left within the media in particular. Let me see. Where do we go? Chris, St. Cloud, Minnesota, KNSI. Go right ahead.
Hello, Rich. My name's Chris, St. Cloud. I am calling to let you know and to reach out to any of the government officials out there. There are thousands of people right now because of the approval of Trump's tariffs and everything going on that now China is hiding stuff from our government, and now they're affecting our country with people that had ordered from over there are not able to get their items, or what they call it, the units of packages. And I believe Trump is doing the right thing. Our government in the U.S. is doing the right thing. Thanks to Elon Musk for helping everyone that needed the help. We just need more pressure on China so that they can knock this off when they come over here and deliver the packages where they need to go. Come on, government, wake up. Well,
I don't know if it's the government that needs to wake up, but I think this is a natural response, right? When you have some tariffs, any tariffs, and there's an increase in them, you're likely going to see a little bit of reticence on behalf of those that are shipping. And that's what they're intended to do, right? These tariffs are intended to do one thing: make it more expensive for us to buy from China so that we buy less from China and we buy more from America. That's really the entire goal, is for America first to flourish and for China not to. So I don't know that they're going to help in that regard, but I think it's important that we start planning alternatives so that we know, you know what, I might like these cheap and free things from China, but the stuff that's made in America is typically, other than cars, I'd say, typically a lot better. And again, if it's a luxury car, like a Cadillac or something like that, I think you're in good shape. Those are pretty good cars. Chris in St. Cloud, thank you for your call. Shout out to KNSI. We shall continue. Where do I want to go? Let's go to Andrea, calling us from Stover, Missouri. KRMS. Go right ahead.
Thank you. I just wanted to give you a little encouragement. You said earlier that you were getting some hate mail or bad things said to you. And, over a decade ago, some people from my parish came by and they just said, well, how does it feel to be hated by everybody in your community? And I said, well, it's great. And he looked at me and I said, I'd be worried if they liked me, because these people are very sick. They torture and kill for fun. They legally kill, which my daddy served in World War II, and he said that's how it started, but Hitler made it legal to kill people. and to watch out for that, and to always put God first, and the commandments of God come before man's law. And that's what I've been doing, and I'm still here, which back in over a decade ago, 2013, Detective McLaughlin said that I was the only one to live here that long, and he was supposed to be getting my $100,000 back that they
Well, I
stole.
bet he was.
but-
I'd like to get $100,000 too. But you know what's interesting, Andrea? Something you said is that you're right. You're oftentimes, if you're going to get a bad rap from somebody, I wear it as a badge of honor. I really do, and I agree with you 100% on that one. I made a couple of jokes, and I tried to explain to them that's what I do here. You know, don't think for a second that I'm here to have a 30-minute conversation with each caller. I can't do it. We don't have enough time in the show. But you're right. If you're standing up for what you believe is right, and those people are against you, then you're doing it right. And truer words haven't been spoken in a long time. Andrea, thanks for your call. Shout out to KRMS. Let me see. We're going to continue. Tracy, Myrtle Beach, South Carolina, WRNN. Tracy, go right ahead.
The deep state still has people inside the FBI, the DEA, and the state organizations, state law enforcement here in South Carolina.
Yeah, I would say they're all over the country. I think you're right. I think this is part of why President Trump is there.
I'm talking about an operation here in South Carolina that
I'm talking right now.
identified.
And he's talking about draining the swamp. This is something that is going to take a long time to do. It doesn't happen overnight. And, it's like any other thing. Like if you've ever had like a hornet's nest or anything, these things are not necessarily easy to get rid of. At least if you're living on the East Coast, it's not easy to get rid of unless you're really experienced in that stuff. These things, they come out, they come at you with a vengeance. That's what's going on here. And it's not going to be easy. But I think you put in the right people, you put in the right leadership. I think especially at FBI, they got a twofer. Right now they have Kash Patel, but they've got Dan Bongino. And I think this tag team is a good thing. Tracy?
They've still got people embedded way deep in the organization because good information is not getting to the people who need to hear it.
I understand. That's not going to change overnight, sadly. It's not going to change overnight. We have to make sure you've got people that are protected by everything under the sun, by either union, by contract, by all sorts of stuff. And it doesn't mean that every last person has to go. It doesn't. My brother was in federal law enforcement. He's recently retired. There's the majority of the people that serve in federal law enforcement across all these agencies. These are solid people. But you do have a handful of people that, and maybe more than a handful. Who knows? Maybe it's a handful to half. I don't know. I do know that it takes a long time to root these things out because these systems are created in order to advance the cause of the deep state, not to decrease it. Tracy in Myrtle Beach, South Carolina, WRNN, thank you for your call. Getting to the rest of your calls and more straight ahead.
This is America at Night with Rich Valdez.
You got to know that you are the most listened to night show in prison.
America at Night with Rich Valdez.
All right. Kind words there from the Tiger King, Joe Exotic. Thank you, sir. And I want to go to your calls. Let me see. Where do we go from here? Let's go to Joe, Bethel, Connecticut, WLAD. Go right ahead.
Good evening, Mr. Valdez.
Sir.
Truthful broadcaster.
Thank you.
I have finally figured out a way for the Democrats to level the playing field for transgender athletes.
How's that?
Recruit some greyhounds and some dolphins.
I thought you were going to say maybe just let the boys compete against the boys and the girls compete against the girls. How's that for a novel idea? Joe, thanks for the call. I appreciate the joke. WLAD in the building. Good man. And let us continue. Let us go to Brody, Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania, KDKA. Go right ahead.
Hi, how you doing? Always great to listen to your show. And I was listening to Mark Levin the other day. A big fan of his, too, of course.
Sure.
I'm very, Yes, I'm very, very upset about this attack on the Jewish people over in Boulder, Colorado. And the last lady, mentioned, this person's Muslim and this is good. We don't like Hamas. We're not really against people that practice a religion freely. I just wanted to point that out. There's good and bad in everybody, but attacking the Jews are going to be very strong and stronger. The bond in Judaism is very strong these days, and it's stronger than hate. I just wanted to say that anybody
Good
out
point.
there.
I appreciate that, Brody, and I think you're right on. I think we need to be stronger than the hate. I've always believed in that. I believe we should have the conversation. Doesn't mean it's going to be a protracted, hour-long debate, but we should have the conversation even if we disagree, because ultimately, I don't think any of us were built to fight forever, right? You can be a fighter, you could be a trooper, you could be a champ, but ideally, there isn't a book out there, whatever your religion is. Mine happens to be Christianity. I can't think of any instance where I'm supposed to just, go for the jugular every single time. Jesus himself said, love God, love people, turn the other cheek. This is a faith based on love and forgiveness. And I think those are good things to live by, irrespective of what you believe. So, very good point, Brody. Thank you for your call. And George in Reno, Nevada, KOFI, you had a comment as well. John in Vero Beach, WTTB. Sorry, guys, the music means they're kicking me out of here, but you guys both had something to say about Putin and Trump. I want to get to you guys. Hopefully, if you're able to call us back tomorrow, you will. Hasta la próxima. Take care. Good night, and God bless you, America. I'm Rich Valdez.